Welcome to the Mason Duchatschek Show. And before we begin, this episode is brought to you by workforcealchemy.com, helping leaders uncover hidden profit leaks inside their business operations. Jonathan Maxim has helped scale hundreds of apps, but what makes his approach different is structure. After raising $9 million and hitting 1 million downloads in 6 months as a founder himself, he's gone on to lead over 1,000 campaigns for more than 330 different tech companies, including TikTok and Universal Music Group. Today, he helps founders turn early traction into scalable, repeatable growth. Jonathan, thanks so much for joining us.
Pleasure to be here, Mason. Thank you for the excellent intro.
When you first engage with a founder, what are the biggest signs that their product is not actually ready to scale yet?
Well, the product ultimately is an extension of their personality and their mindset. And really what makes great companies is not hitting the right product and getting lucky, but it's more the founder's mindset of grit, resilience, persistence, ability to learn, humility. So I'm actually looking at that first and how that manifests into their product. And a lot of times what I'll see in an early stage product is a lot of people building it with AI, which totally cool with, totally respect it. But the AI essentially works on averages. And what does the average 1,000 apps have for their onboarding experience? And it will build that rather than building something super personalized to the audience that their product's built for. So the main thing that I'm looking at is the first time user experience with their product. Do I feel the magic within a few moments? Am I automatically quickly connected to the product's problem and solution? Does the app solve the problem for me within that onboarding experience? Does it go for the call to action? Does it go for a referral? So I'm really looking at how quickly it hooks the user. And oftentimes they don't. Even some of the best apps out there today still don't weave that psychology in as early as possible. But that's one of the things that I've seen as a major lever for success on these products. So after I understand the founder's mindset and where they are standing and how open they are to learning the craft and actually being a tech CEO, then we move into auditing that product.
So how do you know when a business has real traction versus some early momentum that'll just fade?
Well, a lot of new app founders get momentum at first. They'll post it to their social pages, their LinkedIn and email lists and family and friends, and they'll get a burst of traffic and get excited, but then it dies off. And that's very common. And that's usually when they land on my doorstep. And so the way that I look at traction, I guess it's just through osmosis or natural maturation of working in this industry. The trends are obvious. Once the apps hit about 10,000 users, in one category that creates statistically significant data. We can actually look at this thing in terms of volume, micro, macro. Will this scale with the current metrics that it has? 10,000 is that benchmark. And then on top of that, this game is no longer about hitting a lottery and having a product go viral and getting lucky. It's more about building a real business model out of it. So are they monetizing? What's their pricing and packaging strategy? Do they have an upsell, downsell strategy? Do they have a referral program rewarding users for sharing it and getting, let's just say a month free? So if they don't have real revenue and they don't have real users, and when I say real users, I mean an engine or a pipeline that can send them users on demand. A business can't sail along like a sailboat. It needs to have an engine mounted in the back of it, pushing it forward as a speedboat.
So what should a CEO focus on in the early stages if their goal is to reach that first 10,000 users quickly and sustainably?
So the first milestone I always work to hit with the founders is 1,000 users, because once you get to 1,000 users, again, statistical significance on the onboarding journey. Between the time that somebody clicks sign up and becomes an active user, what's the drop off there? What's the registration rate? 50%, 80%? How many people make it through start to finish? So that's where I will audit how effectively the product is intaking users and activating them and getting them excited and inspired. But really what we call the alpha phase, that first 3 months, getting that first 1,000 users on there is also about establishing the customer acquisition costs. For example, we just launched a project management app for construction businesses. The average customer acquisition costs $1,000. And we discovered that through doing split testing initially, the first 1,000 users, only took about 250 users to establish that benchmark. But the guy's pricing this product at $20 a month. The customer would have to stick around for like 3 years to get profitable on $1,000 customer acquisition costs. So that's like a major reality check. And it's like, okay, my product is either not competitive enough to command a hundred or 200 or $300 a month to where it can be profitable on $1,000 CAC, which is the industry average, or, we need to find some other way to drive down customer acquisition costs, open up other channels, build referral programs. I'm always looking at how much it costs to acquire a customer, because that sets the barometer of where they sit in the industry. And it's like, okay, how long of a road do I have before this thing's going to get profitable?
And what did you do with that particular company? Did you find ways to cut their customer acquisition costs, or did you find ways to make it more valuable, or a combination of both?
That's actually a really good question. So first of all, I had a hard talk with the founder and I said, look, man, you might not be happy with the metrics, but you need to understand that every founder runs into this barrier. This is the first barrier that they run into. They get a reality check on how hard it actually is to run a tech company. This is why you need guidance and systems and support. I'm really big on systems, as you mentioned. So I told him, like, this is normal. In fact, we're actually beating the industry benchmarks by having, $1,000 CAC within the first week. So we're doing what mature companies have been in business for 5 years. We're achieving that in our first week. So that's actually not bad. The weakness is on your sales strategy. First, you should be selling multi-seat engagements. So if the average construction team is 5 people, you sell a program with 1 seat, one with 5 seats, and one with 10 seats based on your industry research. So now instead of getting $20 a month, you're getting $100, and then instead of charging $20 per seat, let's charge 25. And so now we're up to 125 per month average customer, average revenue per user. And then you add in a pipeline component where you call the bigger companies to sign up for the platform and say, hey, we'll discount this if you buy 3 months in advance. And if you add in, 5 extra seats. Now you're talking about a multi-$1,000 transaction on $1,000 CAC. See what I'm saying?
I do.
And so, hey, maybe we sell a 12-month for pay in full. So the sales strategies that people learn from working in phone sales and other aspects of business, those all apply to apps too. Even if you got a B2C app that's $7 a month, you can still sell it through a church or through a nonprofit or through a business to their audience in bulk. And so that's how a lot of these businesses early on are getting profitable quicker, because B2C apps, low ticket apps, any low ticket business, I mean, you got a long road ahead of building enough revenue that the snowball is bigger and rolling on its own rather than you having to push it uphill.
And based on how the CEO responds to you, maturity wise and ego wise, that lets you know whether or not there's someone that you can even work with early
Yeah.
or not.
Yeah. That's why we do a close-ended 3-month initial release, because if we find that their product's not going to be strong enough to perform in market, we want to tell them as soon as possible. Or if the founder's not willing to modify the user experience or change the pricing strategy, we know this isn't going to work. We're not going to sell them something that we're not confident we can deliver on, because we know customer acquisition costs got to come down, LTV got to go up. If you're not going to let us pull those levers, let's just part ways now so you don't waste any more time or effort on this. And you can go back to the drawing board and figure out. Or he says, yes, let's do it. And we make those changes before we go back into market, before we spend any meaningful money on marketing. So we know, hey, $1,000 in, but this comes out $5,000 average revenue per user from now on.
So what are some of the biggest mistake leaders make when they're trying to grow their user acquisition too early? They jump the gun a little bit and they're like, oh, and they start going for growth before it's ready. What are some of the biggest mistakes that you see happening on a regular basis?
Yeah, they essentially overpay or they waste money on marketing, because what we do, like, we keep it to a bare minimum. I'll spend $5-10 a day per ad, maybe run 10 ads and have it spend $100 a day for like 10 days. So that's our core principles, 10 by 10 by 10 rule. 10 ads, 10 split tests, different messages on each of them. $10 a day for 10 days. That will get you enough data to establish your customer acquisition costs, which audiences, age, gender, location, which hooks, messages are performing highest. And so we'll bring that back to them and say, before you invest any meaningful money in marketing, here is the most profitable audience you should target, right? For some apps, it's, males over 50, and other apps, it's, females 18 to 34. If males over 50 are delivering you 5x ROI and females 18 to 24 are giving you 3x, yeah, females are still profitable, but you want to target the one that's giving the 5x. And so what a lot of the mistake that a lot of new tech CEOs make is they start dumping money into marketing and into product, like heavily front loading it, thinking, I'm just going to push growth. But what ends up happening is they don't have all those metrics, and so they don't understand where the waste is happening. And then they burn through budget, and then they run out of runway. And so as soon as I get involved, I'm like, I'm auditing right away and say like, hey, let's make sure you're not burning too much right now because you need to learn on 100 or $1,000, not on 100,000 bucks. And
Right.
that's the main misconception that what we were taught in school was develop this big marketing campaign, spend 100,000 bucks and hope for the best. Nowadays, we can measure it on a granular basis and make sure it gets profitable as we spend.
So, can you maybe walk us through a real example where a company was struggling with growth and what specifically you did that changed, or what specifically you did, or whatever you changed that made the difference?
Well, I always think about this one app in Tennessee. They would deliver fresh organic groceries that were like overstock essentially. And so they would go get it from the grocery stores and they would deliver these fresh boxes of food, $50 a month. Initially, we launched the ads and it was $50 to acquire a customer for somebody who pays $50 a month, meaning the return on ad spend breaks even in month one. They start making profit in month 2 or 3. But we did this split testing. We ran it across all these different audiences, and we found that females over 65 were $10 customer acquisition cost versus the index or the millennial who they initially asked us to target millennials with one kid. Millennials were $50 to acquire. Old ladies were $10 to acquire. So they're 5 times more profitable targeting old ladies. Maybe they don't want to drive to the store. Maybe they can't drive to the store. Maybe they just, value that more. So, or maybe it's a less competitive industry, right? The old ladies versus the young ones. So that's the mindset, that's the refresh or the cold shower that I want to bring founders and say, wake up. You're wasting money over here right now. Let's put this into a more profitable audience. And if they can comprehend that and get with that, then that shows the agility that's needed to be a successful founder because most people who are launching apps these days are coming from another industry. They're guys like you who are successful in their business and then they start an app thinking, I want to go take on the app world. But you have to have that agile mindset because you're in the most competitive industry, the fastest moving space, and it requires like a very technical and different skill set than running a services business, a consulting firm. It's much more technical and different. So I always try to just be really upfront with them about that so that they can understand what they're getting into. Every business has its pros and cons. The grass is always greener on the other side. Pick a business, commit to it because the tail might be longer in software, but you have a bigger upside. Whereas in services, you can make more cash up front, but it's much harder to scale. And so there is no wrong battle to fight. It's just about which battle do you want to fight as a founder?
You're reminding me of a conversation I had with a guest on the podcast maybe a few weeks ago. His name was John Malura. And he shared a quote because what I hear you talking about is test, 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 test. That's a common thread and theme that I've picked up in our conversation so far. And he made the comment, he said, one test is more valuable than 1,000 opinions.
Couldn't say
And
it
I
better
think you're,
myself.
what's that?
I couldn't say it better myself.
And you don't care what these people's opinions are. You have the data because you've tested and the data is telling you the truth.
I don't even care about my own opinion. I might hypothesize that millennials are going to be more profitable than boomers, but we don't know until they get in market. There might be 100 apps competing for that click in the market you want to be in, and only 2 apps competing for the click in the boomer market. So we just always have to let the data speak. And when we do that, then it's a lot easier to have these conversations because it's like, it's not about what you think or what I think. It's what's the data telling us. And that's just a healthy way to go because I feel like it creates a bridge between two people and says, okay, he said, she said, but we do have one bridge between us, one unit that we've created, which is the data. And that's the source of truth that we can agree
Right.
on.
And I could see where a CEO, and I don't know how much you've dealt with this, if at all, I'm sure you have, but I could see where a hard driving CEO has surrounded himself with folks that are competent and capable, but might be a bit on the cheerleader side. And they don't want to bring the boss bad news. And they want to offer opinions that support the boss's opinions so they stay in good favor. It's like the old story about the emperor has no clothes. No one wants to tell the guy that's paying them that, hey, this isn't a good idea, or I don't agree, or here's why, because everyone knows it's the messenger that gets shot. But
Mhm.
to have a third party such as yourself to come in and just say, hey, here's the data and this is what is and isn't working. Your opinion is secondary to what the data is telling us. And I see the value in that. And I can see where it would be an expensive cost of education for businesses to do this by trial and error.
Now imagine, Mason, you went to your 5 best friends from college and you asked them for 100,000 bucks each and you go take 500K and start deploying someone else's money and you don't know these things. it's not uncommon where I'll meet a founder like yourself who comes in and has spent $1 million building a product that should have costed $100,000. And they'll burn through their runway before they can actually get live and validate the product. And so that's a super common issue. And so then we're scrambling to raise more capital for them, but they don't have the metrics to prove it. The way I see it is like, love me or hate me, if I can be a conveyor of truth to help you avoid those pitfalls and those potholes, my job is complete here.
So, what does a structured growth system actually look like behind the scenes for the successful app?
Well, over the years, starting with back in 2016 or 2014 when I founded my first app to 2016 when I launched my first growth agency, that's where we ended up getting TikTok as a client, working with Triller, some of those bigger, more enterprise clients. So I was observing how they build and what levers open the next door. That's really what this business is about. It's not about doing everything all at once. It's about focusing on the one constraint that is going to open the next door for you. And so it's a heavy game of focus. And again, that's a different mindset than people coming from other industries. It's not always so cut and dry and clear. So our process always starts with an alpha. That's where we validate, does the product actually work? That's what we're looking at, the activation rate. Out of 100 people who download the app, how many become actives? Some apps, 20 of them, right? You're talking about 80% of people are getting left at the front door because they were not compelled to complete the onboarding. After we establish that stronger conversion rate on the onboarding, so we'll redo the first time user experience, the onboarding experience, make it interactive, hook, problem solution, social proof, call to action, things like that. Then we move to the beta phase. And the beta phase is where we actually start investing in marketing. During that first phase, we spend a few $1,000s just to validate the product. Second phase, the beta, that's where we go and scale up to those 10,000 users once we've identified the most profitable audience. That way, they're not bleeding money while they scale. And then after we've established that 10,000 user mark, then we move on to doing the retention and engagement marketing. This is called the optimize and monetize phase in our process. So we'll make sure that all these new users that are coming onto your platform get retained for 30 days through email, SMS, push notifications. And then we also restructure the pricing and packaging strategy like I talked about before, because a lot of them are either undercharging or overcharging, or they're not maximizing their ARPU, their revenue per user, in an intelligent way. And now we have data, right? We got 10,000 users of data we can read and see, okay, where are these users dropping off? Who are the most high spenders? What does that ICP, that ideal customer profile, look like? And then we start morphing the business more around that profile. If it's older guys or younger women or whoever, then we start building the experience more around that niche. Ultimately, we niche the product through this process. After optimize and monetize is done, then we move to virality. That's where we build in the viral component. So, reward users, give them a month free for every friend who signs up and, starts a free trial or who pays. So give them a mechanical incentive to share it with a friend. And then also, we look at that like a yin and a yang. On one side is a user ambassador program, so they're telling people about it and getting rewarded for it. On the other side, you got the influencers or the creators, the affiliates who are bringing people on, people like yourself. YouTube channel, make a mention, make a few $1,000s off of it just by sending users to the platform and getting paid on a performance basis. Not just shelling out $5,000 to have them post an Instagram story, but saying every customer who signs up, I'll give you $50. And
See,
then
and
once
that's a
those folks,
win-win. I love what you're talking about there because they're only paying for a fraction of the additional revenue that they're getting that they wouldn't have gotten otherwise.
yeah, and a
That's a
lot of
no-brainer.
people I've seen so many people go pay influencers a few $1,000s. And you know what's funny? Sometimes, like the first post with an influencer, sometimes get 10,000 downloads off of one post. They'll be like, oh my God, I've cracked the code. But the issue is that influencer posts a second time and the audience maybe gets 100 downloads. Why? Because all the people who are hot and ready to buy clicked the first time and now their audience is tired. They're going to have to cultivate that audience for months before it'll start delivering. So people will get that kind of false sense of hope by having a spike. But the other issue with having a spike, let's just say you get 10,000 users in a day. This exact thing happened to me with my first startup. My onboarding wasn't optimized and only 35% of those people signed up for an account. So I still lost 65% because I didn't have a good onboarding, nor did I have monetization. So I didn't make any money off of those 10,000 users who downloaded, 14,000 users to be exact. So unless you build these systems in advance, a little spike, a flash in the pan really does nothing for the business. It's not sustainable. Oftentimes the product is not ready to handle that kind of traffic. Sometimes you'll have crashes. Other times it's just the product is not monetized effectively and they don't make any money on it. So those are the 4 stages: alpha, beta, optimize, monetize, and virality. Once those are done, then we take them in front of investors. At that point, you're talking about a business that has product, marketing, sales, virality, all woven into the model. You got one growth engine that can be turned up like a dial. It multiplies users through the virality program. It maximizes revenue. It makes app into a real business. And then that's what I consider investable.
So, how do you balance speed and structure when a company's under pressure to grow fast?
That is definitely a hard part. That, man, you are so sharp. That is the main battle that founders are fighting in their mind is, I want to move faster. And I'm telling them, oh, only spend, 50, $100 a day on ads. They're like, I want to spend $500 a day. I want to grow faster. And I'm like, all you're doing is accelerating toward a brick wall, essentially. You'll run out of runway. And so this is where the mindset component is so, so important. I mean, I'm sure you've experienced this, right? To get good performance out of your team, you need to understand their crafts enough that you can guide them, direct them, meanwhile, maintain KPIs. And so a lot of founders who get into tech think, I'll just delegate everything. That worked in my last business. But it doesn't work like that because you don't know what they're actually doing technically. So you can't enforce a good installation of an SDK. You can't enforce a good reporting system because you've never done it. You can't set up a smart creative and growth engine because you haven't done it. So this is where I really encourage founders to immerse themselves in knowledge. Like, the only reason I'm good at this stuff is because I'm 24/7 consuming knowledge around how to make apps better, and I'm launching them. So they need to be thinking in the same way, not just kind of thinking Band-Aid approach. I'll just slap this performance marketer on who's worked for TikTok. That won't always save the day if you're not willing to learn the craft yourself and to make the modifications to the product. And so that's always a reconciliatory moment for the founders. And again, my hope is that I get them truth. My goal is to be respected, not to be liked, right? I mean, sure, that's great if I'm liked, but if I can help the founder succeed by not burning through $1 million that they raised and then being on the hook for all their best friends and from church and from their social life, that's one more founder that might succeed.
So, what should a CEO do when their growth starts to plateau after an initial spike?
Well, growth usually plateaus when you either are not optimizing your engine or when you're using methods that are not evergreen. I used to be a growth hacker, so that's how, like, for one launch we got like 100,000 users in a day. Another one with TikTok, we got 25,000 users in a day. Those are great, but again, unless you can control volume, it's not really that useful. And that's why we build growth pipelines. So we have an ad-driven pipeline. We have an organic pipeline. Like, for example, my stuff I post to YouTube, to Instagram. I have ads retargeting people who watch my YouTube. I also have email marketing. I have outbound. So that way I'm not overly dependent on one growth channel. And so when founders start hitting a flat line, it's usually because they don't actually have control of their growth mechanism. And that's just another reminder. You got to build a growth engine that can be turned up like a dial. And so ads and organic are just a key piece of that.
So, what's something, because you've mentioned companies like TikTok and some of these big companies, what's something that smaller companies consistently misunderstand about how big companies approach growth?
Big companies get the user to the value of the app really, really fast. So with TikTok, they didn't require people to set up accounts. All they did was, when I was working with them, they were just focused on making the algorithm super addictive. Don't need to register, don't need to set up anything. You just jump in and you're hooked in their videos, right? That was their way of presenting the value very quickly to users. Whereas some apps will have a really long onboarding process or won't even be thinking about solving the user's problem within that first interaction. So if I could leave one thought with founders, it's how quickly can your users feel the magic? I like to have the users feel the magic within 3 taps. First screen is the splash screen. That's the hook, capture their attention. Second screen, what brings you here today, which is diagnosing their problem. And then the third screen is, okay, cool, we can help you with that. I think of the Wim Hof app. I downloaded it the other day or reinstalled it the other day. And first screen said, hey, here's what the Wim Hof app does. Obviously, breathing and meditation, cold plunges. And then on the second screen, it said, what brings you here today? Anxiety, sleep, blah, blah, blah. It selected those and it said, boom, screen 3. Okay, let's jump in and do a quick 3-minute breath work. And so right there, 3 taps into the app, I'm doing my breathing techniques. I'm feeling the magic of the app. I'm getting goosebumps just saying that. And that's what you want the user to feel. You want them to get goosebumps on their arm and feel the magic with as quickly as you possibly can. Because once they feel the magic, they're sold. And guess what? On screen 4, he pitched me the free trial. Sign up now, $8 a month, free for 7 days. Get started now. But because I already felt the magic, already had my problem diagnosed and solved, and I felt the experience, I went ahead and signed up. I paid.
Nice. So, what are the key metrics that actually matter if your goal is profitability and not just downloads?
Well, another great question from you, Mason. A lot of respect for you, man. Reach, impressions, clicks, installs, CPI, these metrics all matter, but they're not the ones that are determining the success. So the way I like to think about it is your business is a funnel. At the top, you reach, let's just say 10,000 people, 1,000 of them click, 100 of them download, 50 register, 5 customers, or something like that. In a lot of businesses, they'll have one stage where it's like 100 people start the onboarding, only 10 finish it. So then we look at that major bottleneck and we optimize that metric. So that's the best way to do it, is to find the biggest constraint in the business where revenue is getting stopped up and unblock that. It's like a traffic jam happening. So part of it is knowing, like, basic funnels are like impressions, clicks, downloads, registrations, free trial starts, purchases. And so all of those metrics matter, but the metric we're optimizing is at the bottom, revenue, right? So purchases. But we have to unblock the top of the funnel. First, we have to put it in front of 10,000 people. Then we have to make a call to action that's strong enough to get them to click, and so on. So it's not that those other metrics are less important. It's just that they're ancillary to the core goal. They all serve a purpose. It's like a flywheel. And so we always start top of the funnel, optimize there, move mid funnel, and then down funnel. And if you try to optimize down funnel before you've optimized top funnel, for example, if you don't have 1,000 people coming to your app, you only have 10, how much data can you really get from purchase data, right? 10 users is just not enough to make any meaningful decisions on.
So, I always learn from examples and stories. They always stick with me. So, I'm going to ask the same of you here. Can you maybe give an example of a time when a company was focusing on the wrong metrics and how you helped redirect them?
Yeah, we have this dating app that we launched about 6 months ago, and they were paying $23 per customer registration. The goal was $9 per registration. Once we get there, then the app could be profitable. Well, we hit that goal. Basically, the way you get the cost per acquisition on an app down is you launch a bunch of new creative, whether it's organic or paid. So in our own company, we launch 50 ads a week. So, basically the more variations, the more chances, the more at bats that one of them's going to hit and it's going to, be massively profitable. So we optimized this app. It's a dating app for progressives in Colorado. These people are coming to meet people of like mind, and it all sounds good. We got the customer acquisition costs in by like 60%, more than in half. But the pricing strategy wasn't there, right? He's charging $40 a month. $40 a month is what Tinder and Bumble, these super mature companies with hundreds of millions of dollars in revenue, that's what they're charging. These guys have market dominance. They can charge basically whatever they want. So I kept pushing him. I kept saying, we need to get that. We need to have like a 7-day free trial in here so people can try it before they buy it. Again, feel the magic. We need to have a lower ticket so that they can, get a taste of it before they go and, make a meaningful purchase. That advice was not taken seriously until about 6 months in, and now we're doing it. But if we had done that 3 months earlier, we would have been making more revenue per user all along the way. And so, again, I'm not claiming to be right. I'm just claiming that this is what the data is telling us. And yeah, it costs a lot of capital to run a company for 9 months. So now we're doing it.
Different question, and you may already have the answer for this, and I'm sure that people smarter than me already figured this out, but that sounds to me like something you could test on one niche and turn around and do the exact same thing with any particular group. You just name it something different. You could do the same thing for conservatives that want to meet and have like minds, people that want to date conservatively. Basically all the tech would stay the same. You're just only thing you're changing is your marketing and your delivery, but you might find out just by testing instead of having an opinion that those people are willing to pay more or are more interested. And
Pretty sure the conservatives are going to have more buying power. Leave politics out of this, but
well, I'm just saying that if your guys haven't thought of that, that would have been my first guess. I was like, well, that sounds like a platform you could apply to any specific niche, whether it's politics, whether it's interests, could be
in the
fitness
dogs,
interests,
in the
could
cats, whatever, in the ostriches. Yeah, it's really empowering. When you look at it like that, it's like, wow, I actually have this massive research tool that can tell me exactly how profitable my business is going to be. I just got to spend $1,000 and be a little bit patient. But people are not patient. That's the problem. They say, no, this is the business I made. This is what I want to go forward with. And so then we end up pushing a rock up a hill. But again, that doesn't necessarily mean the business doesn't work. It's just going to be more difficult. Or you want that road? Is that what you want? And in some cases, like we launched this app that is a meal planning app the other day, and he was getting $9 installs initially. We did the split testing, got it down to $2 per user, and he was targeting millennials. Another meal planning app for millennials, and it like takes you to Instacart, helps you shop. Males over 55 were most interested in it, and guess what? They're most interested in reducing cholesterol. So that audience was $1.30 per user versus our old $9 index, brought down to
Wow.
260 when we blended it. So we niched down even further to males over 55 and put cholesterol control into the ads. We put that into the onboarding experience, and boom, his profitability 5x because he's paying 1/5 of the cost, right? So, whether you want to go that avenue, and again, we could have done more testing. We could have tested meal planning for new moms, right? Another group that's probably very challenged about cooking. So that's the kind of thing that this unlocks. And then a lot of people, as you've probably seen, think, okay, if I go for a really tight audience, like males over 55, which is really not tight, there's probably like 100 million people like that in America, but maybe not that much, but still, you conquer that niche. And then you start serving females, and then you start serving people 40 and above. You see what I'm saying? So you can grow the business concentrically around the core business, and that's what we're doing here at Barrel App Launch. Like we only launched apps at first, and then we got into launching SaaSes, and then we got into launching B2B SaaSes. But we made sure that core model was profitable before we started bolting stuff on, because every time you take a directional change, you essentially reset the shot clock, and you have to redo a lot of the work. So I'm always pushing people to just find that real sweet spot. I'll help you find it. But when you see it, let's double down and let's scale massively there, because that's where you're going to get the quick profits.
My mom always said that if you don't have the time to do something right the first time, you'll never have the time to do it over. And I listen to guys like Alex Hormozy talking about people who try to do everything themselves. And he says, sometimes you got to write a check for speed. But what I hear you telling me, if I have an app or a vision of an app, is that, oh, I'm going to write a much bigger check and go slower if I try to do this myself. And I don't recognize the value. Like you have dropped a ton of value. And I'm sitting here thinking that I would actually get paid faster because by doing these processes that you're talking about,
By doing
as
less.
opposed to trying to bootstrap this thing and figure it all out myself. I mean, that could take forever. And just a little thing that you said that struck me. You talked about, oh, do we send SMS messages and emails? Someone can make a simple mistake like, oh, we're just going to send out emails. We're going to tell people my emails. I got hundreds of emails sitting in my thing every single day, and I skim them at best. Someone sends me a text, I know it's someone I know. I'm going to take the time and I'm going to read it. So someone getting me involved, if they just sent me an email, I might not even notice it. It's going to get buried, and you do both. Just simple little thing like that could make the difference whether or not this works or doesn't. It's
The email open rate's 15%, SMS open rate's 85%. It's literally an 80-20. And this is another common misconception, is people think that they're being annoying when they market. But if you're providing a solution that somebody's asked for, you're not annoying them, you're helping them solve a problem. A lot of people are busy and need to be reminded. The average user has to see an app 4 times before they download it. They have to see 7 impressions of your marketing before they purchase. You're actually doing yourself a disservice if you're not doing a multi-touch type of campaign like that. And this is why I just try to convey everything that I've observed, because like you said before, it's not about how much you're doing, it's about what you're doing. Like the founders who end up stepping on their own shoelaces and stringing out and tripping are the ones who are trying to do influencers, trying to do a referral program, trying to do, organic, and trying to do ads at the same time, and trying to build a bunch of product. When I'm working on an app, all I'm focused on is one avenue at a time. And this is something that Hormozy taught me. I went to his conference and he told me this one-on-one. He said, focus only on the main constraint of the business. And then what he also told me, and this is something I applied in our own business, crazy HR strategy. He said, don't just focus your efforts on that main constraint of the business, but focus the whole team's efforts. So you get media buyers, copywriters, developers, all contributing their range of experience to solving a unique kind of problem. It reminds me of this book called Range, where the oncologist observed how firefighters put out fires. And basically, the firefighters don't shoot one hose into the big fire, they shoot a bunch of small hoses from all angles. And so that helped the the oncologists who were doing operations to zap the cancer tumor from a bunch of different angles, break it up, and then it dissipated. So when you apply this principle to business, it's like putting a piece of paper in the sun and expecting it to catch on fire. No, you have to put the magnifying glass and focus the energy into one place. And so we applied that into our business as well. Again, same principle with apps. Focus just on the main constraint. Is it users? Is it registration rate? Is it purchase rate? And then optimize that. And so we started applying that to our quarterly rocks. You might know from EOS, like we do our rocks in a week at a time now instead of a quarter at a time. Focus the whole team's effort on one rock. And then we knock it out and it gets done completely. And we do it on a call so nobody can hide and go async and all that kind of stuff. Been super transformational for our business. And I know you specialize in people operations and all that. So I wanted to at least make mention of that because as a tech startup, it is still human powered. The software is an augmenter and it's a tool, but it is powered by humans who are writing the copy, who are making the decisions about where we're going to put our budget, how we're going to spend it, what kind of ads we're going to make and all that. So the people operations are just as important.
I love your description of focus. I get challenged with that all on a regular basis on a personal in spirit of authenticity. And openness. I get challenged with that a lot. And I just have to keep reminding myself, chew what's in my mouth before I take another bite.
Me too.
And if I'm not finished with what I'm focused on, I refuse to take another bite. And the people around me know, like, he's not listening. I literally will tell people, I'm not doing that. And you could have a great idea, but I'm not doing that until I finish this. I'm not.
Isn't it amazing how many great opportunities you had to turn away to become successful today?
I'm not afraid to say no. I say no a lot. It's one of my favorite words.
That's a great practice and it's difficult. Most people haven't mastered that. They haven't practiced it.
It's liberating because then I'm not getting pulled off in other directions and I feel progress and I don't get slowed down. I'm not surprised that you're into Alex Hormozy stuff. I've read $100 million offers, $100 million leads and his money models book too. And I think I took somewhere between 100 and 150 pages of handwritten notes in my journal from the stuff
Handwritten.
in that book,
Respect.
handwritten. That's how it was because I can carry it with me. I'm not going to lose it. I know, in fact, I might even have it just right over there. But I review that stuff on regular places. I didn't go through didn't listen to his videos. I didn't read his books. Like, oh, I'm looking for one cute idea or confirmation that what I'm doing is right. I wanted precision and efficiency. And that guy's a genius. I just love what he lays out and the way he does it. Spectacular. So when you started talking about some of those little things, like, I understand what you're talking about. Couple questions quick and we'll wrap it up. But what are founders and executives not paying attention to right now that will become critical for growth over the next few years, in your opinion?
I think that people will focus on basic problems instead of what I would call like nuanced problems. Like some of the most successful apps today are quit porn, quit vaping, looks maxing. These are like weird Gen Z niches. But Cal AI, another great example, like take a photo of your food, analyze the macros. These are like nuanced business models. And when you try to go with, let's just say, a proven model like a daily deals app, that's a long road ahead. So I encourage executives, founders, and CEOs to really take time and reflect. And guess what? You have the best research tool on your side these days. What is the most difficult industry of these 5 apps that I'm thinking about making? Or what are the top 5 apps that have a major gap in the industry where I could build something? Ask those questions. The quality of your responses that you get from your AI is based on how well you ask questions. And so I encourage, this is also a meditation of mine, is to stop and reflect more often, to slow down, because I've made so many, just speaking from personal experience, I've made so many hair trigger decisions. And so many of those, I mean, look, we got to be fast, got to be agile, got to be aggressive in business. But as we mature as executives, you have to get out of the woods, if you will, and you have to really zoom out and reflect. So I've actually been taking as much time as I can away from my desk so that I can reflect and think on things. For example, like if you give me a strategy that is challenging my whole worldview around my business, I'm not going to go act on that right away. I'm going to take time and reflect on it and kind of let it percolate and see what comes up. And it's hard to do that because everything is so fast nowadays. You see it like on Instagram, dudes are building all these AI chat bots and agents and stuff like that. And I feel like I'm behind because I'm not doing all that stuff, but I'm intentionally not doing it so that I can be methodical. And where that led me in my own personal case was building a single source of truth database for the whole company before I build any agents so that I have good data from every aspect of the business, every client campaign, every employee, every client, every new hire onboarding, all that's in one database. Whereas before I might have just hopped to building agents. Now I'm really taking time and saying like, what's the infrastructure and the bedrock that's going to make this work well? And whether you're founding an app or whether you're leading a team, like that time, I forget who said it, maybe Tony Robbins or Dalai Lama or something, just like the time between response and reaction or between stimuli and response, that's where the magic happens. And so I just want to remind everybody of that because personally, I've just felt such a positive impact from slowing down, not hurrying. Just my personal enjoyment goes up. My wife and my family noticed it. I'm more present. But at the end of the day, it just makes me a better leader. Not so trigger happy when it comes to my team. I don't yell at them. I don't humiliate people. These are things that kind of happen when you get emotionally charged and somebody makes a mistake. So I really encourage people to slow down to speed up.
It's I'm going to piggyback on what you're saying there because I'm also a huge Tony Robbins fan, so not a big surprise there. But what he talks about, questions are the answer, and your ability to ask powerful questions directs your reticular activating system and decides what you pay attention to and what you don't, and how you can attract things, solutions to the problems if you give yourself the time. But his questions are things like, "What's not perfect yet?" And that helps. What's not perfect yet? Or if a problem comes up, how can I use this? Or how does this help me? Instead of why is this screwed up? Well, you'll get the answer why it's screwed up. But if it's like, how does this help me? What's the benefit of this? What's not perfect yet? Those questions redirect your energy in a very, very positive and resourceful and helpful way. So I'm completely in alignment with what you're talking about. And I've just shared that for the benefit of those watching and listening. It's been very, very useful to me. And it sounds like you and I are on the same wavelength there. So I really, really appreciate everything you shared. If people want to know more about you and your company and the work you do, what are the best ways for them to connect? Because I'm sure there's people listening out there who have these ideas and have these visions, and right now are realizing I don't want to go this alone. I might want some guidance on this. And we say, what's that old saying? You think the cost of education is experience, try ignorance.
Yeah.
So I appreciate your time and your wisdom, and I'm sure everyone watching and listening does too. What's the best ways for people to connect with you and learn more?
First of all, I just want to thank you for being a great question asker and for being an empathetic person who genuinely listens. It's very rare these days. So thank you for that. And I'm sure your audience appreciates it too. I have a ton of tools and resources. The first place is always, in my opinion, always start with education. Get up to speed on what you're trying to do. I have a playbook that I built for founders that goes over the 5-step app launch process. I also have a 1-hour internal training that I've now made public because just people loved it. Just pure value dropping of each 3-month block of launching an app and exactly what to do in that time. So if you want those, just follow me on Instagram or DM me on Instagram at it's Maxim or at it's viral app launch. Sorry, at viral app launch, and just DM me Mason, and then I'll note to give them the playbook for free in the 1-hour training, whatever other resources. And of course, we also help founders launch their apps. So if they're at the stage where they're like, okay, cool, I'm trying to bring in the big guns, feel free to hit up our website, viralappalaunch.com, or, apply on one of the forms on our Instagram pages. At the end of the day, like my hope is to get you the tool set to make good decisions, whether or not you work with us. So I just hope that you take the time to really absorb the knowledge because, like you said, it's a small price to pay now for a lot of time, effort, and money saved later. So do your DD, do your homework. Also, I'm very active in the DMs. If you just want to like chit chat with me on Instagram or whatever, hit me up. Like I will always just try to drop as much value bombs as I can, or at least give you the context on your industry. So happy to help any founder out. I do this all because I was an app founder and I made an app that ultimately failed with 50,000 users on it. And I just learned that lesson. And I just hope that, I can save the next guy all the 4 years of effort that I put into building that first company and actually make it successful, right? Get the payoff.
Today has been wonderful. I've loved every minute of it. Thank you so much. I appreciate you.
Mason, man, this is awesome. I hope we can hang out in person one day. You seem like an awesome dude, and love to chop it up.
Well, I know you surf and I know you snowboard. I'm not very good at either. I've done both, but neither well. Next time I'm out in LA, you wouldn't have to twist my arm to give it another shot.
Yeah,
Thank
man,
you.
we'll surf. You get a little less bruised up in that, but yeah, we got an office over here in Century City. If you ever want a place to, chop it up or a place to co-work, just hit me up. I'd love to host you. All right.
Sounds good, bud. Thanks.